Welcome to another Village Torah portion discussion with me, your host, Rabbi Drew, and I could not help but think when looking at this week's Torah portion, which is Lekha, the third Torah portion in the book of Genesis, or really the third in the entirety of the Torah. We have a lot, when we think about this Torah portion, a lot focusing on Avraham and Sarah, and some of the stories that they encounter together. One of the things that really stuck out to me, I thought I wanted to spend a few moments and wanted to share it with you, concerns name changes. That's right, changing names in the Torah, because as it turns out, half of all of the name changes in the Torah occur in this week's Torah portion. So we're going to look at these, actually all four of them, both the two in this week's Torah portion and also the two that are not, and to see similarities and dissimilarities. So first we have to start off with, of course, our main protagonists, Avraham and Sarah, right? Abraham, Sarah, this early power couple in the book of Genesis. Both of their name changes occur in chapter 17 in Genesis. So here is the story with Avraham's name change. I will actually say his name is Avram, and her name is Sarai. So Avram, Sarai, but they ultimately get changed to Avraham and Sarah. So here we go. When Avraham was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Avram and said to him, I am El Shaddai. Walk in my ways and be blameless. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will make you exceedingly numerous. Avram threw himself on his face, and God spoke to him further. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You shall be the father of a multitude of nations, and you shall no longer be called Avram, but your name shall be Avraham, for I make you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fertile and make nations of you, and kings shall come forth from you. I will maintain my covenant between me and you and your offspring to come as an everlasting covenant throughout the ages, to be God to you and to your offspring to come. I assign the land you sojourn in to you and your offspring to come. All the land of Canaan as an everlasting holding, I will be their God. Here we have a very clear reason that God enumerates as to why he is doing this very particular name change. And it should be pointed out, his name goes from Avram, which is 4 letters, Aleph, Face, Resh, Mem, Sofit, to Avraham. It's really just the difference of an extra letter, that letter being Hey, to now being Avraham. Now, the clear reason that God speaks to Avram, now becoming Avraham, is as far as being a father of a multitude of nations, Av Hamon Goim. So that clearly is this extra Hey, becoming a father of a multitude of nations. Now, later on in this chapter, we see in verses 15 and 16, God said to Avraham, as for your wife Sarai, you will not call her Sarai, but her name shall be Sarah. I will bless her. Indeed, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she shall give rise to nations. Rulers of people shall issue from her. As opposed to Avram, who goes from Avram to Avraham with the addition of a letter, there's exactly the same number of letters, 3 letters to 3 letters. We have a sin, a resh, and a yud that now get changed to a sin, a resh, and a hey. Both of them, this is what is similar. They had no heys in their names before, and now after these name changes, after what we see here in the 17th chapter of Genesis, they both have a hey, clearly denoting and very similar to Avram, who gets his name changed to Avraham. It's about being a father of a multitude of nations. Now, her, of course, is not going to be a mother, but through her, she will be V'haita legoyim malchei amin. Clearly, a similar concept as Avraham. This power couple, Avraham and Sarah, will be influential for a great many nations. So these are what we experience in this week's Torah portion. God saying, you're going to be influential. You're going to be, even though you are in your 90s, you will have kids, and your offspring will lead to many, many, many nations that will come forth following that. Okay, so these are the two name changes in this week's Torah portion. But we have two more left in the Torah. And actually, the next one we will see is also later on in the book of Genesis. And this is found in the 32nd chapter. Jacob was left alone, and a figure wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he wrenched Jacob's hip at its socket, so that the socket of his hip was strained as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking." But he answered, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Said the other, "What is your name?" He replied, "Jacob." I'm going to take a pause here. The way that the Torah mentions when Jacob is born is the reason he is called that. It's his name is Yaakov. The word for heel is Akef. So the notion is that when he was coming out, because he was a twin, right? Yaakov and Esav, that the two of them were twins. And so Esav came out first, and as the Torah tells us, he was grasping onto his brother's heel on the way out of the womb. And that's how he got the name Yaakov, about being healed. Although there's another later also in Genesis that talks about Yaakov, and there's another possibility for what his name means, which has something to do with being more of a trickster. So and it's a little unclear as to what's the true story. Maybe both are true. Who knows? But this notion about either a connection to being a heel or connected to a heel or being a trickster, of course, we actually see a lot of the narratives in which Jacob turns out to be quite the trickster himself. But here, that's his name, Yaakov, and whether you think of heel or you think of trickster, now we have a change. He said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with beings divine and human and have prevailed." He says, "Vayomar lo Yaakov yermer od shimcha ki im Yisrael ki sarita im Elohim im anashim batucha." So, as opposed to what we read in this week's Torah portion, where we have the addition of a letter Hey for Avraham, we have a Hey in place of a Yud for Sarah. So these are not significant name changes aside from really just a letter. But here, this is not a letter change. This is an entirely different name. We went from Yaakov, which is a 4-letter word, to Yisrael, which is a 5-letter word, and really only shares one letter, a Yud, between the two. So, but here at least, again, just like with Abraham and kind of like with Sarah, we do see that there is a specific reason given for the name change. Avraham and Sarai are elevated in their status in being parents of a multitude of nations, being significant for them. Here is because Kisarita im Elohim v'im anashim, you have wrestled with. So positioning the name Israel as a wrestler, right? Literally, it's kind of like wrestling with God. Which I think I've said this before. I'm just going to share it here. It's really interesting when we think about different nations' names. So, for instance, I will simply say, and certainly a conversation for another time to go into a little bit further, which is that Islam, if you were a Muslim, that really means submission, right? And a big part of being a Muslim and Islam is submitting to the will of Allah, right? Here, Israel, we call ourselves Bnei Yisrael, or Israelites, that we are wrestlers. We wrestle with God, we wrestle with human beings, we ask questions, we kvetch. It seems to be a part of who we are. We're not simply about submission. We have questions. We strive and struggle with each other and with God. So it's a different orientation, a different relationship. So these are the 3 name changes in the book of Genesis. Now we still have one left in the Torah, and that is to be found in the book of Numbers. This is for context in the list of the various representatives of the tribes who were sent out for a tourist trip to go check out the land of Israel, as scouts check out the land of Israel and to see what the land was like. And here is what it says about Hoshea. Those were the names of the participants whom Moses sent out to scout the land. But Moses changed the name of Hoshea ben Nun, to Yehoshua. So here is a very slight change, very similar to what we see in this week's Torah portion. He adds in one letter. He already has a hey. He adds one letter, which is a yud. So Yehoshua. Now, this is not a massive difference. Also, what is fascinating is whereas the previous three name changes, we saw a specific reason provided. Here we have no specific reason provided. Moses changes the name. He throws in a yud. We don't know why. Of course, I guess if you wanted to have a little fun with it, you might say, what happened to that yud from Sarah? Right? She was Sarai. The yud went away. Right? Avraham he had a hey added. Her yud, where'd it go? Maybe it landed here. That's probably some good fodder for Midrash. But for now, I will simply say, Yud can make something in the future, can make sort of a present participle, make it in the future. So his name basically means saving or salvation. So throwing a Yud means he will save. And perhaps that's what's going on here with Moses, right? Moses is the current leader of the Bnei Israel, of the Israelites. And ultimately, he does pick Hoshua, who gets his name changed to Yehoshua, to ultimately be the new leader of the Bnei Israel, the new leader of the Israelites, as they then enter into the land of Israel. These are the four name changes that we read about, we experience in the Torah, half of which take place in this week's Torah portion, the power couple of Avraham and Sarah, and the other two being Yaakov, whose name is changed, Jacob, whose name is changed to Israel, and also Joshua, right? Joshua was originally named Hoshea. So these are the four. Sometimes we get some reasons, and most of the time it's a really slight letter change, and then one time is a total name change. So these are the name changes. Doesn't happen so frequently, which is why it stuck out to me in this week's Torah portion. This is the only Torah portion in which we see two people's names being changed. So certainly something for us to consider. Hopefully that was insightful, that, we usually have the reasons for these name changes. Of course, with Hoshea being changed to Yehoshua, we don't have a specific reason granted, but certainly in the story that we're reading in this week's Torah portion, Avraham and Sarah, this power couple who are getting ready to become significant and influential for a multitude of nations. So I hope that was insightful. I hope that was helpful. And before we go, I just want to acknowledge and thank Jewish Home of Cincinnati for all Jewish life and programming here in Majestic Care, Cedar Village, are due to the beneficence and support of Jewish Home of Cincinnati. Thank you. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for watching, and Shabbat Shalom.